Hello, everyone. This is Tam Pham, founder and CEO of Asian Efficiency. And today I'm doing a very special episode for the Productivity Show because I have a very special guest. It's actually a guest I've been wanting to have on the show for a while. And recently it kind of came onto my radar to make this possibility happen. So I'm really excited to have Dan Clark, the CEO of Brain.fm, which is a music app and service that allows you to focus and get instantly more productive, something that we always recommend on the Asian Efficiency website and in our newsletter. So I'm really excited to have Dan here today. How are you today, Dan?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Hey, I'm really excited to kind of start diving deeper into like the science of, focus and how your service and music works. Because I know there's a lot of people who are kind of like skeptical about this, but I think if we can talk through some of those big ideas and how you guys approach productivity through your app and service, I think we can get a lot of people become more productive at work and in life, which is something we're always all about. But before we start diving into your story and how Brain.fm works, one of the things we always like to do is share the top three favorite resources as of lately. And since you're the guest today, I'm going to give the mic to you. So in 90 seconds or less, can you share some of your favorite resources as of lately?
Sure. So I think one is a really good book, and that's Atomic Habits, which your team has probably heard of before. I just love the power of setting habits. Two is a tool that I use in every meeting. It's actually in this meeting right now. It's called fireflies.ai. It's like $100 and it has real-time transcription of our calls. So it's basically like a note taker that I can then search. And I would say it's like 98% accurate, and it's instantly once we hang up, and it integrates right into my Slack. So every single meeting I have, it throws in all the notes and the takeaways from there. And then one other tool that I'm using a lot recently is Roam Research, which is a great note-taking tool that does that networked note-taking, which is really great to have different kinds of ideas and work on them all, and coming back to them, but by date as well, which I really like.
Awesome. Well, we will have links to all of that in the show notes, so don't worry if you miss something. Dan, I'm really curious to hear about your story. Would you mind kind of sharing with everyone here who you are and how you became the CEO of Brain.fm?
Sure. Yeah. So I've always been interested in technology and how it can change the world. I remember my first website when I was 13, and I was just so excited that you could do something and people in Japan could see it. And that energy kind of manifested in growing out, making websites and building out a technical background. And I use technology and business to help businesses succeed. And I was digital director of a company at one point, was really excited about things that we were doing, but I didn't really feel like I was helping people. I just felt like I was like moving things around, and I wanted a career path change. Ended up finding out Brain FM like 3 weeks after it launched, and was so blown away by the service. I was like, I have to work with you guys. Let's go on. I called them like 12 times. I ended up working for free for the first few months. And then afterwards became head developer there, and then eventually purchasing the company and becoming CEO as well. So it's been a non-traditional route, but here we are, and it's been a fun one.
So for those who are listening, I think a lot of people are already familiar what Brain.fm is, but for those who don't, how would you describe it?
Sure. So Brain FM, we make functional music designed to help you focus, relax, and sleep, or really tune into certain mental states on demand. And the way it works is that we all have neural patterns that are in our brain. So, in this interview, you and I, we have these certain neural patterns for talking and for, chatting back and forth. For different kinds of mental states, you have different patterns that through EEG and through different kinds of science, we know what they are. So focus, relax, or sleep. And what we do is we create music with rhythmic pulses, which allow us to have your brain sync to those patterns as it's listening to the music, and then allows you to stay in that state. This has been tried before with like binaural beats or isochronic tones, and we're using a brand new technology called neural phase locking, which allows us to sync this effect long-term across your listening experience, which allows you to truly unlock your mental states on demand.
I think music is such a underrated tool for not only just changing your mood, but also helping you focus and be more productive. And uh, way before Brain.fm even existed or other tools like that out there, one of the things I always loved to do was listen to certain playlists. One of my favorite ones are like the movie soundtracks, especially by
Mhm.
Hans Zimmer, which is probably a composer you've heard of. And for some reason, when I was listening to those movie soundtracks, it always got me into this like focus state. And for anyone else who doesn't already do that kind of thing already, you probably have like a favorite song. And anytime you listen to that, your mood just instantly changes to like being happy, or like there's a song that you listen to when you're sad and you kind of want to feel consoled. And I think focus music essentially it kind of does the same thing where it's specifically designed to help you focus. And so when we're talking about like focus and meditation and sleep, how does the science work there? Like how does the music essentially work for the different type of states?
Yeah, really great question. So it's made up of probably, let's say, three different areas. There's personal, right, which is your personal tastes on music, some of the things that that music may represent to you. There's psychological, which is like triggers and things like that. So you can prime yourself by listening to one song every day before you start working, or eating cinnamon, for example, right? And then there's another thing, which is biological, which is what we're influencing with some of the neural phase locking effect that I was speaking about before. What we're trying to do is when we make focus music, we're trying to line all of those together. So it's music that you want to listen to, which is one of the reasons why we have human composers making the music. Another thing is so that we can control the environment. So it's being able to make music that you want to hear, but it's also making music that's not distracting. So we're removing salience and certain kinds of effects that would take your attention away. And then we're adding in modulations, which is those patterns that we talked about. And those specific patterns, while your brain is decoding the music, turning it from a sound wave into electrical impulse in your brain, is allowing us to influence your brain to lock in that state and actually redirect blood flow in real time to lock into that pattern. So what we try to do is when we make any music, it's trying to have all of those three things lined together to have a really great listening experience, but then also something that's also effective.
How fast does something like this work? Is it like instant? If someone who has a lot of trouble concentrating, can they use Brain.fm right away and feel like the results? Or is it something that takes a while? It's kind of like a habit that you have to build. Like how fast does that
Mm-hmm.
actually work?
Yeah, so it does depend on everyone, but we're seeing ranges between 3 minutes to 7 minutes for everyone on their first time. So if you have high, let's say ADHD, it may take you a little bit longer to lock into that. We also have settings in our brand new app, which you can go into exploring more music, and you can select the power level. So you're able to adjust in real time the amount of, I guess, science or amount of that neural phase locking, which allows you to lock in faster. But it really just depends on who you are. So we do have a questionnaire survey that you can take to fine tune your experience. And we ask things of how sensitive to sound are you, how sensitive to distractions you are, and we recommend power levels for you. But it really, in clinical like things that we're doing to test this stuff, we use like video games to test this. And we're seeing immediate effects, again, in that 3 to 7 minute ratio. And then they persist as long as you're listening to the platform. As you listen to it more and more, you actually get some of those other psychological things that we talked about, which is like the priming, where you're like, this is my focus music. And before you even click it on, you're actually getting into focus because it's part of the habit that you're building around it.
Interesting. So do you find that after using it for a while, you don't have to use it anymore? Can you just get into a flow state right away? Or do you find yourself, as the CEO and the power user, I'm sure as well,
Yep.
do you find yourself then saying, hey, you know what, I just need to focus and I can do it right away. So I'm not kind of like quote unquote dependent on it.
Yeah. So I think, as far as a scientific answer, we're still testing and figuring that out. But from personal experience, for myself, I use still Brain FM every day. I probably use it for 2 hours a day. I start every day with Brain FM. And the way I think about it is it's kind of like, I don't know, maybe a motorcycle, right? Where, learning how to do a motorcycle, or maybe a bike is a better thing. It's like almost like training wheels. It helps you show how fast you can go. But it doesn't necessarily slow you down by keeping them on. There are studies that are coming up that the way we're helping people get into this state is it actually helps condition your brain. It's almost like doing a workout almost, which does make it easier to stay in larger consistency of focus for longer. But it's not necessarily something that we've studied on if you don't need it anymore.
Interesting. Yeah, I've found personally, after using it myself, I think it's a great tool. And obviously, I'm someone who's a little bit more experienced than most people. After using it for a while, you kind of get into this groove of, okay, I know I can focus now. I know what it feels like to be able to focus.
Mm-hmm.
And then I stopped using it for a while. And then when I kind of like fall off the bandwagon, I'm like, oh man, I need to really focus right now. I need to like get clear. Then I'll oftentimes refer back to the music then and kind of use
Mm-hmm.
that as a tool to kind of get into a mental state. So do you find that there's like a perfect duration for beginners? Is there something like that you recommend, like maybe doing it for 10 minutes a day or something? Or would you just say, hey, just use it whenever? Like, how does that process kind of look like for most people?
Yeah, so I'm happy to answer that. I want to go back to a previous thing you just said though, because I think it's really interesting, is that for some people that are trying Brain FM, it actually shows them what focus is or what it can be. And what's interesting, why I'm highlighting that, is because we actually get that from people that write in all the time. They're like, I thought I knew what focus was, and now it upped my level of expectations of what deep focus is. And that's something that some people, just worth experiencing or trying yourself is really cool. As far as duration and, what I tell people and recommend, I always recommend trying it in different ways to figure out what works for you best. What works for me may not work for you. But I think the best way to experience it is having work in front of you that you have to do, putting the music on and finding one of the tunes that you like that you want to listen to. So, listen, okay, this sounds good. And then not necessarily pay attention to the music, just work like you normally would. What's going to happen is it's naturally going to fade to the background. It's just going to be background music, and you're going to tunnel into what you're doing, and you're going to come out. And then after your session, you can say, okay, how much more productive did I feel? What did I do? But I think when some people come in and they're skeptical, it's like, oh, this isn't working yet. Oh, this isn't working yet. And it's funny because the first time I tried Brain FM, I thought it was not going to work either. And it wasn't until the end that I had that aha moment where I got it, and that's where I am today.
Yeah, I think it's really important to realize that not only the power of music, or in a way, it's a vibration, right? But
Mm-hmm.
also, one of the things I've accidentally discovered myself many years ago is when I listen to music with lyrics, there's just no way that I can get into a flow state.
Mm-hmm.
Because at some level, my brain is trying to process what's being said and what it means, and
100%. Yep.
right. And so when you listen to something like Brain.fm, you'll notice there's absolutely no lyrics ever.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Can you speak to that?
Yeah. So you're well on your way of already figuring out some stuff. So lyrics, it's all about your mind, right, and what it's doing. So on a deeper level, that is maybe less science, it's a higher abstraction, is that your brain is always trying to reach homeostasis, right? But the main effort of the brain is to protect you, right? So our brains evolved for the 100,000 years ago. We were as humans, and now we're today where we're expected to plug in and plug out, and our brains are and bodies aren't designed to do that. So what's happening is when we're trying to work and we have those thoughts of, did I leave the stove on? What did this person mean when they said that? All of these things, it's because we're trying to protect ourselves, right? And when you reach this flow state, what's happening is, I'm sure you've experienced it, things become effortless, and you don't have these things that invade your psyche or your space. You're just doing. It's kind of like a form of meditation almost. And what's happening in the technology is we're kind of using music to control your environment, right? To use your environment to affect what's happening in your brain. And then our technology is almost distracting you just enough to be able to entertain the maybe the thing that's protecting you, like your reptilian brain, kind of, which allows you to use all of your other energy into diving in the task at hand. So things like voice processing and things like that does take you out because it's taking away your attention to that. Also, something called salience, which is the difference of sharpness of sounds. So you have like a cymbal bang, and it's like, vroom, and what happens is that grabs your attention and takes it away from the task. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to keep constant sounds in sound, but also in speed of sound, in all these different things. So we're trying to make things not change. The easiest way I would say is if a truck is backing up, beep, 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 for half an hour, you just tune it out. But when it stops beeping, you notice. And that's one of the reasons why we are trying to, one, control your environment, but two, create consistency with every single work session that you have.
So if I want to get the most out of the music here, do you recommend like playing it in on a headset? Can I just use it from my computer on like in a web browser? Like, what's the best way to get the most out of this?
So you can use it off of a web browser or on your phone, but I do recommend using headphones because we have certain kinds of frequencies that we're oscillating through, especially for focus. It's a higher frequency. So it's moving very fast in these rhythmic pulses, which if you're using your speakers, it still can work, but it's not going to be as effective because it's going to bounce off things in the room before entering your ears. To be most effective, what I always encourage people to do is actually do it in a focus sprint. So sit down with what work you want to do and write it on a piece of paper. So I'm going to commit to 60 minutes of doing A, B, and C. And when you're in that focus space, treat that as this is my focus time. So if someone texts you, it's nope, not doing that during this time. Or you put on you go one step further and you stop notifications. And then anything that comes in, if it's none of those three things that you're doing or two things, you write it down that piece of paper, flip it back over, and keep going. And what happens when you do that, you're actually conditioning yourself to respect the space that you're in, but you're also sprinting rather than just jogging. So it's something I recommend, but again, it's really comes down to what people like. Some people listen to this every single day for 6 hours a day. That's even too much for me. But other people use this twice a week kind of thing, and they just use it for their high focus activities.
So do you find that people maybe use like the same track over and over again and just like play something on repeat, or is it more beneficial to mix it up a little bit and change the music, or is it better to do something else? What's been your experience?
So actually, we are doing science studies on this right now, which is very interesting. We have two sets of people, and we believe this is based on sensitivity to stimulus. But there's two sets of people. So there's some people that when they listen to the same track, it's something that gives them a faster like onset of flow, right? And then they listen to different tracks afterwards, but it's always the first one as a start. And then there's a different section of people that novelty or new music every single time is best. So what we're trying to do with our algorithms is figure out who you are and then figure out how to give you an experience that is it works every time. And we have questionnaires inside the app that you can answer while you're using us. But it's really about figuring out, are you looking for this on a scale of 1 to 5? Are you looking this for enjoyment? Or are you looking this for only productivity? Because, some days maybe you want to only be productivity. Some days you want to be a little bit more casual, but you still want to get things done. And we're trying to find out about you so we can personalize the experience and your outcomes.
What I'm personally curious about is who makes the music. Do you have like a composer? Do you have like a neuroscientist? Do they work together? Is it the same person? Like, how does that
Yep.
come into existence?
So all of the above and more. We have video game composers that we poach from the video game industry that are really great at creating sounds and different kinds of things that can have like really great background music almost. They work off of templates that neuroscientists on our team create from different kinds of studies that we're doing. And then we actually have one more step, which we have these programs that use AI to basically take what the composer is trying to do, and an iterative process creates a track off of the neuroscience template. So basically what's happening is the composer says, I want to make music that sounds like this. And they're creating the certain kinds of landscape for the music, the certain kinds of sounds, the different instruments. They're encoding it around a certain kind of neural protocol that our neuroscientists are creating. And then our AI tools are really making sure that the math works out so we can have the effect in the brain.
So it almost sounds like it's half human, half math or science to make something more productive. Isn't that crazy?
100%. It's the more I learn about what we're doing, the more we find out we don't know what we think we know, right? Like, so we know more about Pluto than we know about our brain in certain aspects of like memory and things like that, right? And it's very interesting because our whole model for our business is that we invest in neuroscience and we have neuroscientists on our team because they help us make the product better. And what normally is blocked by academia is brought right into consumer side facing apps fast, and we keep the cycle going. So it's the same type of technology that's actually they're using to treat Alzheimer's with different kinds of bursts through oscillations, just like we're doing in music. So it's really crazy. I do every day. I'm like, I can't believe we can do this with music. And there's other things that we're experimenting with too that we're blown away from. So one of the things that we're testing aside from our consumer is actually medical applications. And the way anesthesia works is it basically your brain is still on, you're not in a sleep. It's just the different kinds of the way your brain communicates to each other is obstructed by anesthesia. We are doing studies where we're giving people brain FM before surgery and then after surgery. And in our pilot studies, which is before clinical approaches, we're seeing that we're helping people wake up 200 to 300% faster, which is no joke. If you're trying to recover and normally would recover for an hour, you're waking up in 30 minutes. And I think that is really what shows me that the stuff that we're doing is working, and I've seen the blood, the fMRIs of showing the blood flow and stuff. It's just really amazing that music, just by listening to it, can have such a dramatic effect on us.
Yeah, because I'm thinking if you can apply that in the kind of like medical space like that, what are some other creative ways we could use that? Because if you can use it for focus, I think that's an introductory way to kind of get into this, right? Like it's kind of like the foot in the door. If you want to be more focused or more productive, play this, and then you're gonna get into that kind of flow state to be able to focus and get stuff done. Same thing if you want to feel more relaxed or calm, like getting into a meditation state, right, is really powerful. So would you say that brain.fm could almost replace like a breathing exercise? Would you recommend that it complements it? Like how would you approach that?
Yeah. So as far as relaxing, we haven't our bread and butter and where we have most of our scientific research is on the focus side. But we have a lot of people that do use us for relax, specifically for meditation. And they have told me, they're like, hey, I have reached different levels of meditation using Brain FM as almost like a guide. And what I always say, and personally what I've experienced, is by combining it in additional practices. So if you're into breath work, do it with breath work, right? Find something that works with you, and it's going to allow you to block out those distractions. Or, when you're meditating and you have like those thoughts that come in your mind and you're like, okay, put that away, and it comes back. It's much easier when you're using Brain FM because it's kind of like that what was the word? The training wheels I talked to you about, or like a gentle shield on coming into your brain and really blocking out those distractions unless you let them in.
One thing I've actually wanted to ask you for a while is how do you test the effectiveness of this? So, like, let's say you're coming out with a new piece of soundtrack or music, and you want to
Mm-hmm.
see how effective this is for focus or meditation or sleep. But let's just dial in on focus here.
Yep.
How would you actually measure that? Do you just ask people, like, hey, how do you feel afterwards? Is there like a certain brain signal or wave that you're measuring? Like, how does that actually play out?
Yeah, great question. So there's a lot of conflicting information in space for this, and that's one of the reasons why we're super. We put a lot of attention into science because this has been, like I said, try to be done before with isochronic tones or binaural beats. And if you search on YouTube, you'll find millions of videos showing this is the thing. If you get your alpha frequency, like things like that, right? And what we do is we actually go above and beyond testing it. So, as I said, we have certain neural protocols for the different kinds of levels. And what we do is we do video game testing, specifically SART testing, which is an academic standard where there's simple games where numbers flash on a screen. You have to press the space bar in a certain amount of time. And we're measuring the level of accuracy and speed and reaction time in the first 0 seconds when you start all the way up as you keep going. We have other video games testing that we do that gets a little bit more complicated than that. We also do EEG. So we have medical grade EEG in collaboration with their different partners like at Northeastern and things like that, where people are listening to music and we get to see how they're doing those SART tasks or how they're doing other kinds of activities. And we get to see the different electrical impulses that your brain is producing. So we're able to collaborate that with those different neural patterns that we talked about for deep focus states, like we said. And then finally, we do fMRI testing, which is using magnets to basically slice your brain up in real time. And we can look at the blood flow in your brain. And what we're looking for is not your brain lighting up like a Christmas tree. It's concentrated concentrated blood in different areas that are associated with focus or the different kinds of mental states that we're doing. So your prefrontal cortex is your top left of your brain. And that's where we really want to get all that blood flow in because that allows us. So, okay, this person is actually in that state. And it's through a combination of those tools as well as some other like trade secrets and stuff that we've been able to develop that allow us to show, okay, this is something that is going to work and it's going to work for a large quantity of people.
You brought up YouTube, and it actually brings up a question that we had several people ask me because I kind of polled our community and asked, hey, I'm going to have the CEO of Brain.fm come on. Do you have any questions? So I have a few questions here. And one of them was actually like, how does Brain.fm compare to something like Focus at Will, which is something very similar, or even YouTube, where you can get stuff for free? And there's, like you said, there's millions of playlists you can listen to, a fire pit if you want to for 4 hours. You can have all these like binaural beats like you mentioned. So how does that differ, or how is Brain.fm better or different than those solutions out there?
Yeah, sure. So off of YouTube is probably one thing, and a lot of that is music that's made with I would just say older ideology and older technology. So again, these binaural beats and isochronic tones, at one time they were believed to be very effective, and the person that invented them created papers about it, and there's tons of white papers and stuff. But they're actually from quite a while ago, right? And then the people that created that actually, it's been shown time and time again, and there's many white papers that show this, that those aren't really that effective. They trigger certain effects in your brain, but then they drop off over time. And it's not necessarily all effects or all if you put something in your brain, right, and you have an effect, that doesn't mean it's good or bad. It just means there's an effect. So, we're looking for positive effects into triggering flow state or in your focus state. So I would say just older technology. And what's happening with Brain FM is we're not actually doing just like a theta wave or a beta wave or something like that. We're actually oscillating through all of these different bands and all of these different waves, which allow us to create that pattern. Our brains are just complex. Again, we don't know how we form memories and keep memories. Like there's theories, but we don't really know. Someone gets like gunshot in one of their brain and they still live, and they, there's so many things that we're still learning. And to think that our brains, you can just listen to one frequency on loop forever, it's just not as effective, I would say. I'll stop there. And then other companies that are claiming similar claims, which you named one of them. There's the main difference is, I think, about technology and about speed of adoption. So, we have neuroscientists on our team. We have a lot of the papers in this space we actually have funded and written ourselves. And we have, a different approach than others, where if I went into further, it'd be probably delving trade secrets, but we're aware of competitors. We do a lot of analysis on competitors against us to make sure, hey, are we still, how do we match? And from data that I've seen, we are much more effective than them.
One other question that was submitted was, a while back, you guys had a lifetime subscription offer available where you could get Brain.fm for free for the rest of your life, essentially, not for free, but for one payment. And someone said to me, hey, I wish I had taken advantage of that offer because I don't see it anymore. So they asked me if I could ask you, do you think that's ever going to come back? Or is that a deal too good to be true?
Yeah, so that was one of the ways. Brain FM, we do. How do I say this? There's a lot of ways to fund a business and grow a business and start one, and that was one of the ways we did it. We actually capped our lifetime at a certain number, and we hit past that number. So now we don't have any plans to open that back up again. Unfortunately, if they didn't get it, I'm sorry about that. But we are looking at treating those lifetime people as lifetime for any product we do, you guys get, because they really helped us fund the company in the beginning and has allowed us to come to where we are today. So we really love our lifetime people, but unfortunately have discontinued that.
Well, maybe you and I can figure out a deal or a backdoor deal or something for our listeners if they ever want to sign up for Brain.fm. But
for sure. Yeah.
Switching gears a little bit now, being the CEO of a company and also the CEO of a productivity company in a way, one of the things I'm kind of curious about is just your approach to getting stuff done, just being productive overall. So what are some of the things that you do on a day-to-day basis or on a weekly basis that makes you productive?
Sure. So some things I'm sure you've heard of, and some things, if you haven't, I'd love to hear if any of these are new. But one of the first things that I always do every morning is I create habits. So big on atomic habits, like I was saying before. One of the things I do is I always wake up and I do my regular routine of like brushing my teeth, things like that. I pour an iced coffee, no matter where I am, what weather it is. And I live in New York, so it gets quite cold sometimes. And I sit down in front of my computer and I turn Brain FM on. As I turn Brain FM on, I sit down and, just as I mentioned before, is I basically write. And for me, because I'm not starting with a focus sprint necessarily, I write down 3 things. I write down, what do I need to do today, right? I write down what's on my mind, right? Like what's on my mind to make today successful? Because what I need to do and what makes today successful usually are 2 different things. And I need to optimize for what I need to do. And then I also do a structured brain dump, which is really, instead of just free journaling for 2 pages, which I used to do, what I've now done is anything that's on my mind at all that's not in a what I need to do today or what's successful, I try to write down and box out. So sometimes, personal stuff is top of my mind, and that is just going to distract me when I'm trying to get things done. So instead of pretending it doesn't exist, I acknowledge it, I write it down, I write some thoughts on it, and then I move on to the next thing. And then after that, I will look at my list. I start planning out what I need to do today. I change out maybe plans for tomorrow. And what I'm really trying to do is have clear objectives to know this is exactly what my day looks like, and this is what's going to happen. It doesn't always happen like that, but it allows me to have better planning and being able to stick to goals. I also do that for my weeks. So usually on Sundays, I spend like an hour, and I don't really have a time for that necessarily, but what I'll do is I just kind of prep for what this week looks like. And while I'm doing that, I'm also trying to look at what tasks, like how much they cost me, right? Is it super hard to do? Is it easy? What's my emotional connection to it? And I actually try to plan my weeks like I plan my day. So all of the hard things that I'm doing is scheduled on Monday and Tuesday, and all the easy things are on Friday. So that's some things that pop up for me. One of the things I always encourage people to do that I also try to practice myself is being in the right state of mind. So obviously at Brain FM, I'm very sensitive to my state and where I'm at. And sometimes I get to a project or something I need to do, and I'm not in the right place for it, right? So I need to either change my state or I need to change what I'm going to do. And depending on the control that I have, I usually change that. So for today, actually, I was at the office and I wanted to make sure that I was in the right state of mind for this. And I had a wrench come up today. So I actually just walked back home to record this with you. And now I'm right back in and I'm ready. And things like that really help. So, Brain FM obviously is a great state changer. I do that in combination of other things, but I also go on a walk. You can go get a LaCroix, whatever is in for you. But what I try to do is always be sensitive to that when I'm going about my day.
So I love that you plan your day and week in a very kind of like methodical way. Like you kind of know what's ahead, you kind of know what to do. You're very present in terms of what's coming up and what you're trying to tackle. And as you and I both know, life is not perfect. Things happen, right? And as you kind of mentioned earlier, you kind of have to adapt and kind of get in the right state of mind. Have you ever had a unproductive week at all, like where things just weren't flowing for multiple days? Like it's easy to change your state immediately, but I'm sure you've been in situations where you had, a terrible week. Like how would you then get yourself out of that?
Yeah. So the way I look at maybe just life is different abstraction levels. So I think of it as Google Maps, right? So when you anywhere in the world, you zoom up enough, you're in the world, right? That's the first thing you want to do. And then sometimes you got to figure out what country you're in, what city you're in, and then what street level. And I think that we live at street level, right? So sometimes it's you think you're going, from, let's say, from Boston to New York, right? And you think you're in the right direction, and then you're like, oh man, I don't know what's happening. I don't know if I'm in the right direction anymore. Whenever that happens, which is really those bad weeks that we talk about, what I try to do is say, okay, at this abstraction level, at this Google Map zoom, it's too low. I need to go a little bit higher. So the different abstraction levels, I think, come to different perspectives. So not only in the Google Map metaphor that I'm using, if you were from street level and then you went up to an airplane level, it changes your view so you can see what path you're on. And I think as you change your perspective, you also have to see, why you're doing the things you're doing. So if I was to break it down, I would say that, the street level is basically like your, what you have to do today. It's your daily tasks, things like that. One higher level than that is your goals. Why are you doing the tasks? Why do they come from? Oh, it's probably because you have goals to do A, B, and C. Okay, well, I haven't been able to hit my goals. Okay, well, go up higher. Are they the right goals? Why do you have goals? What is your, KPIs, or if it's personal, what are your objectives for life balance, for business? And I think if you went even a higher level than that, then it goes to values. What are your core values as a human? Why do you get up out of bed every day? And what I always do is when I get stuck and things aren't working, I try to pause and recognize that, go up one level, and then go up another level until you get the surface. And sometimes you have to go all the way up to core values and say, okay, well, is this still a core value of mine? Okay, it is. Good. Then go back down. And that allows you to stay grounded into your mission and what you need to do.
Oh man, I really love that analogy of being able to zoom out and zoom in, and the different, elevations that you're going through in terms of how you view your life. Because I think that is something we don't do enough. And I like that analogy of being on the street level. That's kind of like the day to day, right? We're kind of like going places and doing stuff, but we need to zoom out more often. And I think we all need to spend more time doing that, just making sure we're actually are going in the right direction and living in alignment. So I really love that. So I kind of want to end it on that note, because I know your time is valuable here as well. So Dan, if people want to find out more about you, Brain.fm, any sort of like tips and tricks, where should people go?
Yeah, sure. So, on Brain FM, we actually just relaunched. So we have this great new website, which shows, you can get started with Brain FM and try us. But we also have a great learning section that we write blogs on how to be productive. And that's some stuff that I'm really excited about sharing with people. So I share a lot of the things that I just shared with you, as well as some other things from our COO and other people that write as guests for us, which is really exciting. And then, I encourage everyone to try Brain FM. We have different power levels. We have different things that allow you to, try, if this is a tool that works for you. And I encourage everyone to try it because it's something that changed my life and definitely altered my direction. And I know it has for a lot of other people too. So definitely encourage you to try that and let me know how it goes.
Awesome. We'll have links to all of that in the show notes. So don't worry if you miss something. Dan, thank you so much for being here today and sharing all the wisdom. I hope people enjoyed it and also learned a lot, because I definitely did. So if you want to check out Brain.fm, something that we recommend and use here at Asian Efficiency, be sure to go check out the links here in the show notes and check out their product as well.